Welcome to Securing Your Brand. Join us as we explore trademarks, copyrights, and intellectual property to ensure the protection of your creative assets.
Hello and welcome to Securing Your Brand with attorneys Holly McFall and Melissa Jeda from Secure Marc Legal, your go-to source for the latest insights into intellectual property and legal trends. In this episode, we have a special guest, Marc Farron, a technology and cybersecurity expert with decades of experience, from starting as a programmer to running his own networking and tech support company, and now helping small businesses through the Small Business Development Center at FGCU. Marc brings a wealth of knowledge to the show. Holly, Melissa, great to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Hi, Marc.
Hey.
All right, well, let's have Marc introduce himself, huh?
Sure, be my pleasure. I'm Marc Farron. As has been said, I do have a long career in technology. Like many people, I started off in programming. Actually, during college, I got my first paid job as a programmer and worked for the first half of my life in software development and software development companies in a whole various different types of positions, including executive positions. Moved down to beautiful Fort Myers, Florida in 1997 and started my own company here in 2001, which was not a software company, but was a network support company, operations as opposed to development. It's the terminology that we use. So it's an ops company. It was an operation company and ran that successfully for a number of years. And currently semi-retired and have a part-time position as a consultant at the Small Business Development Center at Florida Gulf Coast University, specializing in helping small and mid-sized companies in technology.
Marc, I think I've known you since about 1997 when you guys first came down here.
Just about when I came down here, within a year or two. In terms of my academics, I have a bachelor's in computer science from NYU and an MBA from Columbia University and a whole bunch of different technology certifications.
So not every small business, not every home office has an IT team. We don't have our own security team, making sure that we're not clicking the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing. What are some of the basic understandings that we need to have, that our clients need to have to understand cybersecurity and what it is?
There's understanding cybersecurity. I'll call it the concepts of cybersecurity. Of course, there's the activities that one should do to make oneself secure. In terms of just a basic understanding of cybersecurity, cybersecurity 101, there are really four different components that you got to think of in terms of the big picture. There are hackers, I'll call it the bad guys, who want to come in and let's say do harm to your system. I'll call it your assets. And they're not necessarily bad guys. They could be your own users who inadvertently delete an important file. But it's someone who could do potential harm. To what? This is the second part, your assets. And that could be your building. That could be your infrastructure, like servers and phones and PCs. Or more and more, it could be your data. It could be your personnel. But more and more, we're concerned about your data, your intellectual property, personal property that you're keeping on customers and employees, things of that nature. So you have, let's say, the hackers who are trying to get the assets, and they're looking for the third piece, the vulnerabilities. They're looking for the weak spots in your system. You've locked the front door, but you didn't lock the back door. When you come into the office, there's no one there to see, to screen you, so you can just walk over and start looking at notebooks. Where is your greatest vulnerability? So you have hackers trying to get assets, looking for vulnerabilities. And the last thing is what we call controls. Those things that we put in place, that we buy, that we spend money, time, energy, and money on to shore up our vulnerabilities. And those could be a number of different things. We think of firewalls, you think of antivirus, those are the more obvious ones. If you take one course on cybersecurity, you're probably going to learn that.
And Marc, what are those different types of controls? Can you go through those with us?
Yeah, sure. Be my pleasure. It really, basically, if you look at it in principle, three different types of controls. So one thing that is very often overlooked in, I'll call small and mid-sized companies under 500 employees, is policies and procedures. I deal with a lot of companies. Some of them are small. I have a small consulting firm where I deal with large companies, enterprises. And enterprises are very concerned with governance. They talk about governance till you could fall asleep on the topic. But when it comes to small and mid-sized companies, they're just trying to, get the product out the door and get, marketing and stuff like that. But policies and procedures, we have a screensaver. Your password has to be this long. It has to be changed. You have to use multi-factor authentication when you can. And of course, policies and procedures about email, going slow and checking where that URL is, where it's coming from before you click through, things of that nature. So policies and procedures are actually really important and very often overlooked. The other
like any type of business, though. It's like you got to have your foundation, you got to have your policies in place, you got to make sure you know what your employees are doing, that they're following your policies and procedures, and making sure all that's in place. That's important to all businesses. Yeah,
it is, and it's very often overlooked. We start a company, we got to make profit, we got to meet payroll, we got to do whatever we do, we got to pay the rent, whatever we got to do. We're running around really fast, and the last thing we think about is these kind of things. And just as a side note, with AI coming in and cybersecurity, it's even more important what you're clicking on, what you're looking at. Are you sending personal information? You're just throwing spreadsheets into ChatGPT to get answers on it. And meanwhile, it has 100 different social security numbers. It's stuff like that. It gets it gets weirder with AI, and how people are, using AI without any policies or procedures or oversight. So that it gets even more important. The second piece is the obvious one, technology. We think of firewalls and antivirus, really important stuff, things that you got to invest in. So that's another control to shore vulnerabilities. And the last piece, which is coming more and more important, we call it SATA, security, education, training, and awareness. So that, again, sitting down with your staff and saying, slow down when you get an email. See where it's coming from, especially if it's asking you to click through to a hyperlink, especially if it's asking for your password and user information or things of this nature. Work with a company that sends out simulated phishing attempts, that are faux phishing attempts, so that they learn. It's it's education, training, and awareness. So it's education, it's training. You don't learn how to ride a bicycle in a classroom. You don't learn that you got to get attacked before you learn that you screwed up. It's just as easy as that. You could be sitting there and told that a million times. So that is coming to be a more and more important piece, because the vulnerability that hackers are seeing is the human. That's becoming more and more important.
And they're so sophisticated now. It's hard to tell. It's a lot of times it's really hard if it's real or not.
Impossible to tell. And again, with AI. Yep. You're not going to get one of those spams or misspelled anymore that you go, that's that guy from Nigeria again. And, and of course, AI could create really nice landing pages. So when you click through and it asks for your username and password, it looks like Microsoft, or it looks like your company's login sign, so it is getting harder, and which means you have to slow down more.
Yep. We always tell people in copyright law, don't right click, copy and paste. You got to check before you actually click that link.
Yes, especially in your field, just as crucial, but always crucial.
So we've talked about what it is. We've talked about where we need to put our time and our effort and make sure we have it in place. What are some tips to make sure that we're actually following our own procedures or our own policies?
I'm glad you asked, because I have to write down,
how much time we got
to hear, because it is important to get concrete stuff. This is kind of, the philosophy or the theory of cybersecurity. What the hell do I do when I get on?
What can we act on? What should we do and what shouldn't we do? What can we act on?
Okay, good. So number one, and these are not in order, but they're really important. And I want to also emphasize that when I'm talking about this, I'm not just talking about your notebook or your PC. It's also your phone. They're all computers. Everything, tablet.
And it's still a computer that's still connected to the internet that can still be hacked, I guess, just as much as your
easily or more easily or whatever. So the first thing is patching. And what is patching is just updating. When you get a notice from Windows that says there's an update, update it. When you get a note from your application, from QuickBooks, well, QuickBooks, especially if you have on-premise, SaaS is usually they update it themselves. But any application, any system, if you see, your Dell machine says there's an update for it, or HP or whatever you have, and they say always do it. And the reason for that is when they provide an update, they also release why they're doing the update, and very often it has to do with security. So there is a piece of paper from Microsoft saying Windows, 10.3. had these flaws these vulnerabilities. where hackers could come in. It's actually telling everybody where the doors are open or where the windows are open, So it's telling you, and they go, but we have an update, so don't worry about it. Once you update it, the door's locked. But then you take 6 months to update. Not a good thing. So patching, what we call patching, constantly updating, look for updates, be responsive when it comes to that. The other is backup. Everyone hears about ransomware. Ransomware is really hitting SMBs. Ransomware continues to be on the rise. It's like the pandemic that doesn't go away kind of thing. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and people aren't really aware of it. And there are a lot of things you could do around it, but one is backing up to a place that's not on your network. Maybe the old-fashioned USB drive or the Google Drive that you take off the network. So when you go, you don't see any Google Drive. So the system, the ransomware won't find that because it's basically encrypting or corrupting all your files, which is screwing you up. And maybe taking that information, that's the worst thing. But at least you have a backup that isn't corrupted.
So you're talking about like a backup that you can remove from your system. That's not just online, you're backing up, taking it with you.
Right, that you could either physically or logically remove from the system. Or digitally remove from the system, if not physically. Yes, it's okay.
So you have a copy of what happened before you had the hack or you had the whatever, the virus.
So when they say it's encrypted and you can't get the information, you go, nah, can't get the information. It's still a problem. They're in your system. They're corrupting things. And, it's still a pain in the butt. Okay,
but you're not held hostage.
You're right. Exactly. Right. There you go. You're right. There you go. And then just protecting the endpoints, that all the endpoints have antivirus, including your phones. Like invest in something, do some research, malware byte, whatever, any event. I shouldn't say any, do your research and find some good endpoint protection is really important. The other thing is encrypting sensitive files, that they are encrypted in some way. So if someone does get to it, someone hacks your system, they still can't get to it. And there are easy, I should say, everything's easy once you understand it. But things like Microsoft Word and Excel have encryption in them. If you do a YouTube on how to encrypt a Word doc, it isn't that hard. If you need help, okay, reach out and do help. But these aren't, it isn't rocket science to be able to encrypt important files. So, think about that. The other, which is really important, is two-factor authentication. Wherever, certainly your bank, any financial institution, any place, GoDaddy got hacked, but, it has two-factor authentication. So they're not going to, wherever and whenever and wherever possible, it reduces the possibility, because they have your password. You have to assume they got your username and password. You've been screwed. Okay, so we have to assume that two-factor authentication will reduce that from 85% to 2%.
And when you're saying two-factor, you're meaning that annoying where I'm going to send you a text message or a Gmail, you got to put in that code, you got to open the key.
There you go. Either it's going to be a text or it's going to be one of those authenticators, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Duo. Some apps have their own authenticator. Yes, pain in the butt.
I got to stop complaining, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's not 5 minutes. It's more like 15 seconds. It seems like 5 minutes. And we just have to accept it, and it's worth it. Every place you go where they have it, 100% of the time, use it. And you will be better off for it.
Like with Microsoft Windows these days on like 11 and stuff, it comes with its own antivirus and all that. In your opinion, is that good enough, or do you recommend people get to...
I hate to pick particular vendors.
Sure,
this is going to be recorded, and next year might be horrible.
That's true.
That's true. Better or worse. Like 5 years from now, someone's going to say, great. Okay, fine. Sorry, I said that. So yes, the Microsoft Defender, which comes with most Microsoft products at this point, is very good.
Okay.
It's sufficient.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I've read, in the past, it's always like, don't trust what comes with your computer. Get something on top of it.
No, this is very good. They really up their game in terms of this. I'll call it the store-bought antivirus that you buy. And
we're really talking to like small businesses, at-home offices, or people that are working remotely. These are things that they can use on their computer and things that they can do for their processes. Their company may have networks, and hopefully they have systems and procedures and processes put in place. But this is really for that small home office or that work from home person.
Right. And this is very pertinent. Yeah. And Microsoft Defender at this point is, yes, I would say that's sufficient. The other is a VPN. So a virtual private network, which you could put on your phone and on your notebook. I won't go into details, but it does protect you, especially like a public Wi-Fi. You go into Starbucks and Any place, a hospital, where you are, when you go on the public network, it's very public. It's very easy to hack those. It's extremely easy to hack those. It's extremely easy to spoof those, create an alternate one that people think they're on the Starbucks, but it's actually somebody in the corner who just created it, and you're all going into his network, So it's very easy to do those things. And the VPN will basically encrypt your information from the get-go. From the very get-go, they won't know who you are or even where you are or anything. It changes IP addresses. It hides completely the whole IP packet, I'll call it. The whole who you are, where you are, what you're sending, everything. Not a lot of money. Well, with the vendors, I use Mozilla. It's like $5 a month. Some things come with things sometimes, So definitely a VPN. I would say a password manager. So a password manager creates passwords for you and encrypts it for you. There are a lot out there. I'm not going to get into particular ones, but no. Again, we're becoming what's called passwordless. And that's the whole goal, that when you log on, think of your phone, you log on with your face, so there's some other recognition besides a password, some bio thing, so you don't need a password to get in the system. Windows 11 is really good at that. And then when you're in, there's some password manager that's creating your passwords, that's keeping everything encrypted. So you don't really have to know your passwords. This is the end game, passwordless systems. And that's where it's going. And I would say if there isn't something native that you like for a password manager, invest in one. It's worth it. And then I get, just if you have a team, the concept that training, the importance of training, the importance of simulated phishing attacks, the importance of investing in that. That is the weakest link. Way over 90% of hacks, of people getting into the system, is through, they call it human engineering, screwing around people, picking people out, whatever you want to call it. Social engineering is a cybersecurity term. So, and that's way over 90%. Depending on what you read, 95%, 98% of the way hackers get in, you are the biggest vulnerability. So to invest in training, some kind of awareness. I always say, when people are on computers, when people are on the internet, when people are in their email, everyone has ADHD. Everyone's just clicking away and going as fast as they can. No, stop, slow down, relax, take a deep breath, don't click on things, slow down. So that training, that awareness. And the last thing I would say is just plan for an incident to occur, especially if you're a company of any size, or maybe if you're not. Just plan for an incident. What would you do if you got hacked? Who would be the first person you would call? Would it be your IT support? Would it be a lawyer? Do you have those phone numbers? Just plan. The wrong time to plan is after you get screwed. That's the wrong time to plan.
Hopefully they've been backing up their data on an outside source, and so thereby they're making sure that they actually have a plan in place and their data still protected.
Yes, totally.
I want to circle back. You said that you are now working part-time with the STBC. How did you get involved? What do you do? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, I sold my business. I still have a very, very small consulting firm, but I sold my business probably about 11 years ago. And it's just happenstance. I won't tell you the whole story, but it's just happenstance that I knew the director of the Small Business Development Center here at FGCU, and I bumped into him. We started talking, and one thing led to another. And here I am. So it's a part-time gig, but the Small Business Development Center is a phenomenal organization. It's funded by the Small Business Administration, by the federal government, basically. All the consulting is completely free. It's very professional. We get paid, so but all the consulting is free. It's really a national organization. It's usually housed in state universities. So here in Florida, in Tampa, it's at UCF, and at Orlando, it's at UC. In Florida, it's USF, Tampa, and in Orlando, it's UCF, and and here down in Fort Myers in Southwest Florida, it's FGCU, and so on. Of course, the states at FIU and places, of that nature. So, and really professional. I highly recommend it. The Small Business Administration defines small and mid-sized businesses as startups to 500 employees. So anybody in that area could go and seek consulting at no cost. And there are people that specialize in technology, specialize in marketing. A lot is in capital acquisition, going to banks and how do you prepare for that and how do you get funding for your company. And there are the people who specialize in export. So it's really well-rounded.
Marc, thank you for coming and joining us today. It was so much fun to sit and talk with you. And
Yeah.
I think I'm going to need a VPN for my phone because I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm going to be talking to you afterwards.
Yeah.
Right?
You need a
So
VPN.
I took notes
as well.
while he was talking too. Yeah, I definitely took some notes there.
There you go. No, very helpful. Very important.
I'm not guilty of the free Wi-Fi, like the non-protected one, but I definitely use other people's Wi-Fi. So I am thinking it's something I might need.
Yes. No, good for you. It is.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Securing Your Brand with attorneys Holly McFall and Melissa Jeda from Secure Mark Legal. And a special thank you to Marc Farron, cybersecurity expert, for being here and giving us some tips and shedding some light on all things cybersecurity. If you'd like to connect with Holly or Melissa, you can visit securemarklegal.com. And please like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to leave us a review in the comments. Holly, Melissa, so good to see you again. Mark, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate the insight.
This was such a great episode. So fun being here.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.